Good afternoon, everybody. To kick us off, actually, before I jump into any of the data, I just wanted to show off a quick video, hopefully to wake you guys all up from your after-lunch slumber. And then we'll jump into some of the actual data, foundations, and then we're going to get into our conversation with our special guest. So that was a pretty nice way to quickly set the foundation, I think, for our conversation today. If you didn't get it from the video, the big focus that I think we're all facing, or a big question we're all asking ourselves, whether you're a manufacturer, a channel partner, or an end user, is how do I increase my revenue streams, but also while adding value to my specific customer? And the biggest thing that we're noticing with this question is that there isn't a silver bullet. There's not one answer to all of this, right? Of course, today we're going to be talking about one of these answers that is helping in that transformation or that digital transformation to a model like you just saw in this video. But the question is certainly impacting all three of those members of the value chain. It is focused on having your product climb the value ladder, and it's something that you in fact engage with every single day, and you just may not have actually realized it. And based upon what Xyte has developed, it can finally be done at a low cost and low risk and quickness to market. And that's going to be a big focus of our conversation today, because that is the true final pillar in that digital transformation to an as-a-service level business. Now, this is nothing new. Some of the most respected companies in the world have developed and are using this as-a-service level business model. Whether it's bikes or whether it's construction equipment, whether it may be exercise equipment, office software, they are all offered in an as-a-service level model. The best example that I can give you is take a look at your iPhone. Most likely you didn't go to Apple, give them $2,000, buy the hardware, walk down the street to Verizon, ask for a SIM card, and then go to State Farm and get insurance on that device. You went to one shop, you said, I need to get service on my phone and I want to be able to make calls, and they said, great, for $140 a month, here's a new iPhone 14 Pro, we're going to throw our service on there. Apple will send you updates for that software every 6 months. We're going to insure it in case you break it, and every 2 years come back to us and we'll give you a new piece of hardware. You never realized it, but you were engaging in an as-a-service business model since day one when buying that iPhone. And that model fits your needs because it's outcomes focused. It is directly delivering to you a solution instead of a piece of hardware. You don't need to own that specific camera or that specific phone. You want the outcome of being able to surf the network, make a call, and have something in your pocket that does all of those three things. And so that iPhone as a service is now proliferating its way into every single market that you see out here, whether you like it or not. And in fact, this digital transformation, one of the final frontiers of finally adopting this level of as-a-service business or subscription-based models, is this specific industry. And that's what makes this conversation hopefully so impactful, is to understand the whys and the hows around delivering a true as-a-service business. Now, when all these companies made this journey, it wasn't necessarily easy or cheap, right? These companies made this journey over years of investment of millions of dollars and teams of engineers. Now, the good news to all of you is that even though you may not have started back when these companies have, if you're a manufacturer, or if you were a dealer of one of these companies adopting and being empowered by the as-a-service model, is that today there are solutions to do it a lot quicker. And there are reasons for doing it a lot quicker that we're going to be talking about today as well with our special guest, and hopefully providing you a little bit of guidance of how to do so. The last little quick thing I wanted to talk about before we welcome our guest on stage here is the three main items of actually delivering an as-a-service business properly. Three things that are focused on the three main partners within this value chain, from manufacturers to the channel community to end users. The first one being that move to one-time sales to recurring sales. Don't make your sales cycle that difficult. Keep the stickiness factor of your customers as high as possible. Give them an excuse to come back to you for new products, for new services, for new delivery mechanisms of the outcome that you looked to achieve when you initially purchased that product to begin with. And then the move from cloud-based to service-centric priorities. And I focus this as a big one actually on your channel and delivery community. Right? Everyone in this show and everyone in the audience here, you're all engaging with products that isn't necessarily furniture. We're in a high-tech industry. And it's about time that we leverage that benefit to ourselves and take that high technology industry and use it to deliver that product that's only going to get better over time. Use it to deliver that product that's going to allow our dealers and our channel partners to leverage service-based outcomes by using our product as a delivery mechanism to do so, and help our end users by giving them a product that's only going to get better after day one when they purchase that specific unit. And lastly is the shift to online. And it may sound very basic, but at least in this space, it's actually very complex, but even more important than the first two, and that is because of data. We've all talked about it, whether we're channel partners or manufacturers or even end users, getting to know more about the way that our consumers or our customers are interacting with our devices. Whether you're an enterprise IT manager wanting to understand how your conference rooms are being used, or you're a manufacturer wanting to know which products fail more often than others, the data is key. And by delivering a service-centric business around the hardware as the medium to deliver so, that is where data can truly be thrown into your fingertips. And those are the three items that I believe are the giant focus of at least today's conversation, but a huge focus of why this as-a-service business is so important today. Tesla did it for cars. We're going to be talking about with our guests from Volvo on how they're doing it for equipment. And we can finally now do this for the audiovisual and professional information technology industry. So without further ado, I do want to welcome our special guest on stage. Mr. Santosh Harakamani is the head of service development at the Volvo Group for digital and I&T. So welcome Santosh to the stage.
Thank you, Andrew.
You are a traditional long-term, established hardware and equipment manufacturer at Volvo. So what makes this as a service business model so pertinent today? Like why are we sitting here in 2023 at IC having this conversation and not, 10 years ago or 10 years from now?
Yeah. We are in the middle of this chaos, actually. Everything is happening at the same time. It's electromobility, autonomous a little bit far, but still a lot of things happening. Being connected, actually. And then the disruption in logistics, everything going online. And then energy disruption, that is with battery and that kind of a business models. On top of that, we are moving from B2B, B2C to D2C. And that actually is questioning the traditional retail, and the channel networks. And on top of that, now we are talking about subscription and then on-demand and usage-based business models. For me, actually, why it is happening the way it is happening is for this kind of a, the shift, paradigm shift, I would call as a disruption to happen, there are at least three things in my view have to converge. When these things start converging, we start seeing these changes. First one for me is the business viability. For example, OEMs like us, then we should find a reason or the drivers why we need to change into these business models. And then it is a customer need. Customer like us, either it's the business customers or consumers like us. We need to find a value here, why I need to go towards this. And third thing is that technology then. There should be technology available to make this happen. And if you ask me, not just because we are in the setup of technology here, but technology is the biggest driver to bring this kind of a paradigm shift. If you see that we moved from being connected to smart, now intelligent, actually. Everyone was talking about a few years back, like we have 1 million products or 1 million devices connected. If we are not connected, we are not even relevant anymore. Then we brought the technologies like cloud, for example, and then it started becoming smart. Much more context towards that. It's the smart phones or smart houses or smart factories and smart cities. And then we started adding the data, and then we started bringing the, the what you call the analytics part of it, and then it is more of a cognitive capability started becoming, the device is becoming intelligent. And that one of the reason for me is biggest. If you combined IoT, cloud, and then analytics, they have actually changed the way we have done the business in the past and how we are doing it now. This is a huge change. And then it comes the second aspect, the customers, then us, for example. We have become extremely responsible. I want green and I want safe, but also the perception of value for us is changing. I'm going online now. And also, as a customer, for me, the value is not just buying the product. The experience, the usage, the utilization of the product, and also the value in the context what I'm using it. But if I can just take in a very quick example of a light bulb. I'm a consumer buying it's my favorite example. There are a lot around us because we are entering into a sensory world now. A bulb I buy, which is an LED bulb, and I buy it from you, it's like a 60,000 hours of life, we are done. Mm-hmm. But instead you sell me an app, bulb comes with it, and tells that, okay, I will upgrade the bulb based on the technology, I don't need to worry about it, but also you will help me optimize my energy consumption. You will on and off when I'm in and out of the house. You will adjust the lumen based on my mood, because you can build the intelligence. That is the value for me. Buying the bulb is not the value for me anymore. And that shift, we as a consumers, I think we have realized that. And we are putting a lot of the demands towards our businesses then in the ecosystem.
I think that's a great example, because in the light bulb example, I don't want to own a light bulb. I need my room lit up. Right? It's a totally different way of looking at products and what you're buying and how you're buying it. Yeah. And so in that light bulb example, which is very relevant, especially to this industry too, that provides very integrated systems, right? The goal is not to own a black box. It's to own the outcome that black box is delivering to you and your customer and to your organization, right?
And also the customers, like depending upon what type of customers we are speaking here, if it is a business customers, then, I want predictability, I want, the predictability, and then moving from Capex to Opex. Because I can have control on my cash, and I can use the finances much better way to utilize in my operations, actually, bring a lot more value. And that is what is the need from customers. And we see that already, that is driving, one of the drivers. What is the driver for us then as like OEMs, the ones who are making the products historically in a certain way and sold it in a certain way? One is actually the access to the customers. That is the biggest driver, in my opinion, which we never had. There were a lot of intermediaries. Mm-hmm.
In that value chain,
in
right?
the value chain.
A lot of hands, I think.
Absolutely. Now I have, with technology and the need and all the ecosystem, I have the ability to connect with my customers permanently, pretty much. Not only the customers, but also the products. And what it really means for is, in the traditional way, we've sold like a product or the equipment, and then earned through the aftermarket through a specific channel then. But now I also have an ability to connect to the product during the life cycle. That means I have the ability to use it during increase the type of customers during the life cycle, the circularity kind of a thing. Now I own the equipment, and also, I can reuse, repurpose, and the refurbish. That kind of opportunity will give me a lot more opportunity to increase my revenue streams.
Right. And let's actually, I want to take a pin in that next conversation, because I want to go back to something you said about that value chain and how you're engaging more with the end customer, right? Yep. And I do want to clarify, which is something that's, I think, key to any industry, right? It's not about, for a manufacturer standpoint, if that's who in the audience is listening, it's not about going around or eliminating the current value chain that you have. Yeah. It's actually about empowering the value chain. But you as a manufacturer, from a product standpoint, gathering the data, gathering the analytics of not just the product and the customer, but actually your resellers and how they're selling devices. Let's talk about that for a second, and tell me a little bit more about how this as-a-service business model or subscription-based business model and this data and opening up the value chain doesn't go around that channel, but in fact empowers them. Like, how does that start to come in?
It is hugely, absolutely. And as I mentioned, now with change, for example, some of the industries, if you see the cosmetics industry or the clothing industry, they have pretty much gone online and direct to customers. It's completely different business model. Now I can do the commerce actually through social media. I can pay and the electronics. There's no, what is the definition of commerce actually? It's completely changed. But in the traditional industry, now we had a certain like a structure actually. We had the dealers and the distributors. But moving forward, I think there is I will tell probably the reasons also moving along, but you have the ability to bring a lot of different type of value-added partners in the channel now, and then cross-leverage what they can do, and the ability to combine together and add value into the network ecosystem. That is becoming very, very prudent now.
And I think it brings up an interesting term that may be common in other, like maybe industrial industries. Personally, I've been in this industry for over a decade, and it's not too common in the integrated systems industry. I know it's certainly common in your industry, Santosh, but tell me a little bit more about the aftermarket approach and how products are enhancing over time because of the services or because of what the manufacturer can actually provide to that system over time. Because I think the aftermarket sales, the aftermarket viability of products, kind of where you were going with refurbishments and returns of these units, how does that kind of meld into this as a service conversation?
Yeah, I think it goes back very quickly. Since we own the equipment during the life cycle, typically what happens is that, and again, I'm speaking, it's not as simple as it's easier, said than done. It's a huge. The industry has been existing certain way of doing, like since last probably 100 years or so. All the industrial equipments and the commercial vehicle industries. But now we are trying to think differently and see that opportunities. Now, what we will see is that, like the owning the equipment during the life cycle gives, as I mentioned, that, we have the complete control over the equipment, all the aftermarket, because traditionally we earned from the aftermarket, but now, the circularity, refurbish, remanufacturing, repurpose, and then that gives us a lot more ability, I would say that. That is one of the biggest driver in my personal view. I might be wrong here. There's no right or wrong. As I said, we are just trying to evaluate and how do we earn, what it means, and those kind of challenges.
For sure.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another topic that I loved speaking with you, and I actually spoke to a lot of people that came by the Xyte booth over these last 2 days. And that is, in fact, how these manufacturers and these channel partners can start entering into new markets. I think it's a question that is asked all the time is, I know my customer base, all right, I deliver products to this customer base, but I need to deliver into a new customer base to start expanding my reach. So using Volvo as an example, it's a premium brand, a lot of premium manufacturers around this show today. How can as a service level business or a subscription level business enhance premium brands or really any brand into entering new, potentially value-driven markets?
Yeah, that is an interesting area of new, the revenue stream. For example, like Volvo, if you say it's a premium brand, and if you enter into certain markets where it's very difficult to penetrate, actually, you need to compete with value brands. The price points initially and the investments are so high that oftentimes you are not even in the initial the game actually. But instead of selling, if you say that, probably we go into just use it, pay per kilometer or pay per ton. That gives us an opportunity to be in the market, but also the customers have an access to use the products and understand the value, the quality, and the durability. And that probably will give us the opportunity to capture the markets which we never had. That, I believe, is a very interesting area. Actually.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think something else that I took of that too is about betting on longevity. Right, it's a common conversation with customers today about, my product lasts X amount of years. We have a lifetime warranty. But in fact, it becomes almost a loss leader for a lot of hardware manufacturers because they're not seeing this revenue over time for the premium product that they're providing for a long period of time that's being delivered in that service. You seeing the same thing?
Yep, I think this will be an interesting area. It's again, as I said, it's a lot of challenges for a traditional organization like us. It's a mindset change, the business capabilities, and the technical adaptation to enable this. But I believe that this is something, this kind of new services or the new business models using the technology will give us the ability to look into these kind of additional revenue streams then, which we never had earlier.
One thing we didn't touch on just yet, and I think is another group in the audience at least, is how does the as-a-service business model affect maybe the consumer? And by consumer, I don't mean actual consumer-level individuals, but the final end user. of that product, whether it be a truck or piece of equipment, whether it be a projection screen or a switching unit. How does an as-a-service business or subscription-level business model actually positively impact the final chain in that value organization?
Yeah, I think I touched that in my initial value, right? I mean, first of all, it gives me a lot of flexibility in the way, so far, it's a lot of capital, and depending upon, again, what kind of a product we are talking, right? And if it's a very expensive, high-end equipments, it's oftentimes your Capex is tied, and a lot of things when it's up, the downturns and then economic, the issues, it's quite a lot of impact. But with this kind of a revenue streams or the business models, the customers are empowered, in my view, once again. And that is because I don't need to really think about how do I finance, and when I go through some kind of a downturn, how do I manage it? But now I can really go through this kind of utilizing this, this kind of a business models. I can have a predictability in my operations. It is a lot more flexibility instead of playing the finances and understanding all the complexity of it. If it is a per month fixed cost, and then I can optimize my cash flows in a much better way and use it in adding much more value-added services. This is and I see that already in, for example, car industry. I would say that, and I come from a commercial vehicle, which is still, I think, in the age of evolving it. But car industry in some markets, I come from Sweden. I think, if you are replacing a car, there are possibilities where subscription going for a fixed monthly it's an option. In 5 years, when we go electric, I personally believe that is there is not even the double thinking, actually, because there is so much of value for you as a consumer there.
You enter into our next sort of section of topics that I wanted to get to. It's almost back to basics in a little bit. And I remember when you and I were grabbing lunch yesterday, we were talking a little bit how you're exploring some of these options. But one of the things that I know when I'm speaking to a lot of the people in the audience about as-a-service business models, the question comes up is, well, what does that really mean? What is the type of as-a-service business model? Does that mean a lease? Is that a rental of my specific unit? Am I simply just doing a payment plan? Right. So what does it truly mean when I'm delivering a piece of hardware, piece of equipment, a screen as a service? And what are some of the other options, similar to some of those that you're trialing out in Sweden locally, as we were talking about?
Yeah, I think it's quite many.
It's
right?
large.
Yeah, and then this is not something happening now. Some industries have pioneered this. Actually, if you see Rolls-Royce, it's probably 10 plus years or 15 years, they had this, the fly by hour, pay by the hour, or the pay when the wings are in the air, actually. That kind of business models are there. The lighting industry, the commercial lighting industry, Philips, and they are looking into this already. And then, as I mentioned, in the car industry, that has already taking place. But then there are certain things that are pushing this kind of business models. One is the channel. Traditionally they were working with the dealers, but there are a lot of challenges, actually, why businesses are looking into this. One is the channel optimization. If you see that, the retail industry, so far it has been, especially in the automotive industry then. I'm not really sure about the other industrial equipments and the more expensive industries, but in the automotive industry, the traditional dealership, it's quite in the sales cost, actually. It's an inventory-based business model. You give a lot of discounts and incentives to your channel partners, the dealers, to move the inventory, actually. And that is also quite a lot of cost in the sales act. But now when you have the ability to go directly to the customers, online, and then and this kind of business models, you reduce quite a lot of. That is one of the biggest driver I would see here.
Can you actually go through some of those examples that you were trying out, just as a high level? I think it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm a practitioner also, as I mentioned. One is I tried the mobility aspect, if you see that, traditionally, different way we use, again, I use car as an example, for example. We had earlier, if I need to move from, like, say, my home to airport, we used to book through a taxi or on demand. On the road, I used to stand and wave, and it still exists in many parts of the world. But then came the apps, the Ubers and the Lyfts, and you press your destination and use the option of the car and the price, and then you select it, and the real time where the car is, and then you sit and you validate, you pay digitally. That's completely digital. No, I don't, and it's as much as transparent as possible. Like I can tell that I'm not literally taken for a ride, actually, because I can see the maps also in parallel. And then I tried, for example, per few days, like the herds and the rental business. I used an on-demand business model. It's an app purely. You register your license and a credit card, and then it's a station-based business model. You decide which station you will pick, and then it tells what kind of cars are available. And then 30 minutes before you get the car, the tag, you go there. It's a digital key, and it includes everything, including fuel and the tolls. And then you pay for the kilometer on top of the fixed for the vehicle. And then you use it. There is a fuel card. You use it, fuel up. And then when you return it, I basically returned and then went home. By the time I reached home, I had the invoice. The only physical thing in this whole journey, I could share the car also, by the way.
Okay.
Only thing that was, the physical was the car. Everything was digital. I never met one person. I never did a paper signing off. The complexity of under this short disclaimers with a lot of the fear of being ripped off. And then there was a chat, actually, and that is very interesting for me. The capabilities, when we are moving towards this kind of a new paradigm shift, what it really means, what kind of capabilities we need, not business capabilities, but also the technical capability, the personnel. The person, actually, when I try to test them, one person could answer me technical about the car, about the business model, insurance, pretty much everything. The person was so well educated about the whole process here. And then I'm now trying a subscription model, a car. That is why I was so, with my conviction, I told that in 5 years, when you go for replacing a car, most likely you will not even think actually to replace it. You go for that. I am using now a per month subscription model. It's flexible. Every month I can just cancel it. Same, I give a license and the credit card and it's charged. I went to an experience center just to try the car. I wanted to book it, and they said that no, do it online, it's much easy. And I just went online, 15 minutes, I booked. I get, okay, do you want to deliver it at home or do you want to pick it up? And then you are in the life cycle during the what is happening, and that is the customer experience for me. That is the value for me. I picked it up. Now pretty much it's everything included except for fuel and toll, of course. But yeah. So
and the reason I bring these two up, and maybe some are asking themselves as well, okay, great, that's a car, right? I understand that. And it actually is very innovative, especially and shakes up the car industry, because that's not how we consume or utilize vehicles today. But bringing that actually to this industry, what I hear from them, the reason why I found those examples so powerful is that rental car example that's shaking up that industry. That's a usage-based model, right? It was no hurdles. You didn't have to go to a bank and sign a loan agreement and wait for the dealer to call you back and then get the rental agreement. Like, you were able to all digitally, all shifting to online in the cloud, engage with a service, which was to get a car for a certain amount of time and deliver the outcome that you were going for, right? And you were paying on how you used it. The second one, the subscription-based for the vehicle, right? That was, you weren't paying by mile, but you had, again, low barriers of entry. You had an extremely high-level customer experience, and it was a month-to-month subscription.
Exactly. And then, as an owner, actually, it's about driving and the usage of the the product. But then I don't need to worry about the residual value of it and depreciation, selling it, and that kind of things. And it is very predictable for me. It is very flexible for me. I decide when I want it. There are companies which are doing the electric car, the battery as a service, right? I mean, that means if I want a long range, I can replace it with a fixed monthly fee of different price. So it's really changing the dynamics of how we have done the business in the past.
You focused on the product and the outcome totally differently because of the way that you were able to purchase and engage with the product to begin with.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic shift. I think it's a huge takeaway that hopefully everyone here can really use after this conversation, is that small change to how you simply engaged in acquiring that outcome or product itself that delivered the outcome completely changed your outlook on how to engage with rental cars and vehicles itself.
Absolutely.
And the same can happen here with this industry, regardless of the product they deliver.
But I would like to highlight one thing, Andrew, here is that we are talking about the shift and the good part of it, but there are a lot of challenges actually, and that is, again, we cannot underestimate that challenge, and especially the traditional organizations like us then. One is the mindset change. Huge mindset change, because everything what I mentioned, like historically, it's selling the product, earning from aftermarket through a dealer channel. And now we are going online and direct to customers and using this business model. It's not that simple. We are earning still quite a bit. Why change? It's a lot of, the equipments are on the manufacturer's balance sheet, what it really means. It's a lot of, even though these business models are existing, I'm not sure how many are making money out of it, because it's still in the process of understanding the business model and how to make money out of it and how to add value to everything. And then the business capabilities. That's a huge change, actually. So far, what we did was, when customer goes to a dealer and then they ask for, okay, I need this application, and then the configuration was made. When I go online, we need to have a very minimum possibilities to put it online. If a customer wants to buy online, it cannot happen the way it has happened. It's the product and the feature and services, the configurations. It's very different. And then comes, how can I bundle the products and services, provisioning and bundling of the features. It's very different. And last thing is the adoption of technology, for example. And also, when we are building new services like this, we cannot build the services in the way we have built the product. And oftentimes, that is a huge challenge, actually. Typically, what we do in the traditional hardware business, the manufacturing, it's vertically integrated, or like what I call as incremental development. It's a large product projects, and then your governance and your investments and competencies are built towards that. But now, when we are doing this, there is no right or wrong. As I said, the service is an idea. I see that there is a revenue pool, but you don't have a perfect business model to bring it into the market. How do you do that? I just go to a drawing board, start off. I cannot wait for a perfect, the requirements done and the huge development team, and we need to do it in a very agile way, in a low cost and low time, low lead time, less lead time. That kind of a business model, and that is where the modern technologies. Again, how can I use this modern smart business layer on top of what we have underlying? Actually, that is a huge paradigm shift for traditional organizations like us. Actually,
so I was taking notes actually just to kind of summarize, and I'm looking at our time here, but I think this is actually a perfect place to near our end. Because you mentioned some really good topics here. Let me just actually summarize them. You mentioned strong business model and revenue strategy, right? I think that is huge for organizations to develop a very clear and sustainable business model around how this is going to go to market with. You mentioned strong customer service and support, right? I mean, it's literally in the name of the business model itself, delivering an as-a-service business models focused on service.
Yep.
Right?
And that is, again, another change. I mean, when traditionally we sold the vehicle, customer owned the uptime. But when we are doing this kind of, the as a service or a subscription, we own the uptime, actually. We are part of the revenue system here. And that means we need to really have a real-time understanding of the vehicle and, the incident management and those kind of capability. It's a huge shift.
Absolutely. You had 4 others I wanted to just quickly summarize. You said flexible and scalable IT infrastructure. I think that's key, right? As we recognize, and I view it, yes, as flexible and scalable, but it's also, moving in with the times and the fact that we recognize that our customers are moving in that direction. We also, as channel partners and manufacturers, must as well. You mentioned data-driven decision-making, which we spent a lot about today. I think it's a big, exciting sort of development and outcome of adopting a model like this, which is fantastic. And then you mentioned 2 last ones, which I think are great things for the audience to consider, and that is the competencies and the challenges are subscription billing and the management, managing them over time, of course, for recurring revenue streams, and the digital capabilities, right? I think that was a massive one you brought up in the beginning, the ability to actually develop and deliver products digitally and services and skills such as software development. And the one thing I'll add to that too, as you probably noticed yourself, is a lot of these, it shouldn't scare the audience, right? These are things to be aware of. There are partners out there to work with you to help you get into that model, but these are things to take home with to start to prepare yourself and your organization, whether it be a manufacturer, a channel partner, or an end user, to start engaging in this new shift, right? Well, we just have a minute left, so Santosh, I do want to thank you very much for your time here today. I don't know if we'll have time for questions, but certainly we'll be around talking to anybody that would like to, I think, speak to us both. Lastly, Santosh, if anyone in the audience would like to find more about yourself and how you're involved in this as-a-service shift for new revenue streams, how can they find you?
Probably LinkedIn would be the easiest. We take it from there.
Awesome. Well, also, if you guys want to find out anything more about Xyte as well, you can come visit myself and the rest of the Xyte team at 5G120 down in Exhibit Hall 5, or you can find myself on LinkedIn at Andrew P. Gross. Well, thank you very much, Santosh, for your time today. This was a very enlightening discussion. Thank you to the audience as well for your time, and hopefully we'll find some amazing opportunities to start to partner together and continue the conversation around the shift to as-a-service business models. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.